Hey everybody, this is Kenny. Welcome back to the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. This is a podcast where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. Today, it's a lot of sports. I'll be joined by my partner, Kenny Squared. In just a few seconds, we are going to talk some NBA, specifically the whole Ja Morant situation. We're going to get into that. The injuries that's happening in the NBA right now, specifically to Kevin Durant. Oh my gosh. Who's the MVP? Is it the Joker? We'll see. 3 times in a row. He's averaging a triple double, so it might be him. We are going to then get into innocent until proven guilty in the cases of Mike Clevenger, Michael Irvin, and we'll also talk a little bit about Trevor Bauer. Jet fan that I am, do I want Aaron Rodgers? I'd probably rather have Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about it. Then the injury bug hitting the Yankees. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss a second. Let's get at it. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. And I don't know why I'm talking so high. Kenny, what's going on there in beautiful downtown Cleveland?
We got snow this morning, so that's a thing.
Yeah. Wasn't it 70 degrees one day, you said, or a couple of days? Like 60, 70 degrees? The weather's been crazy. Listen, we've got a lot to talk about today. It is... It's just amazing what's happening. And this is, I think you texted me this last night. This is now the real one of those best times of the year. Like here in September, October, I think becomes one of the best times of the year because we got March Madness going on next week. Obviously happening with a lot of the, conference tournaments and everything. But I want to start in the NBA, and we got to start with Ja Morant. And Now, he's going to be out at least 4 more games. I guess it's now 3 more games after last night. But I think everybody knows, he films the video, and it is so much to this, but we'll try to peel it back quickly. He gets caught, he films himself on Instagram, dancing at a strip club, 5 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning after they lost to Denver. Actually, he got smoked by Denver that night. And he brandishes or shows a gun. I mean, I shouldn't say brandish because he wasn't pointing at anybody, but and I'm curious your thoughts because there's been a couple other things, written about him, and there just seems to be such a conflicted young man here. And he had the incident that I didn't hear much about until recently in the summer at his house. They beat up a 17-year-old kid because the kid is talking trash on the basketball court. And apparently the kid, when he checked it, he kind of threw it in Morant's face. And but then Morant comes out with a gun. Morant gets into a thing also with a security guard at a mall and threatens him, says, "Hey, I'll be back here when you get off." There's been on-court stuff too. It's just been really odd. Especially based on the young man that he's been all these years growing up. He's only 23, but I'm anxious to hear your take and what the heck is going on with him. And I'll add this one last quick thing. He might still be in a lot of trouble with the NBA. Now, Adam Silver doesn't say much, which is a little bit weird. David Stern would have came out and been talking a lot about this already, but if the NBA finds, and this is what I read yesterday, if the NBA finds that he was transporting this gun, on the, because they have chartered flights, so they don't, the NBA players, NFL players, baseball players, they don't have to go through security or anything like that, right? When they get on a flight, they have their own plane. And if they find that, he's transporting this back and forth, a serious violation, of the rules because he's in Denver, not in Memphis when he's showing this, then he could be in a lot of trouble with the NBA. He might not play again this year, which then Memphis's playoff chances, I mean, they'll make the playoffs still, but they're not going to do much, I don't think, in the playoffs. So throwing that in and what he has at stake, what is your whole take on what's happening with Ja Morant?
Well, I'll start with the NBA thing. We already have the precedent for this. Gilbert Arenas, obviously,
Yep.
with his whole incident, 50
Good point.
games.
Good point.
So he could be looking at a suspension that not only goes for the rest of this year, but also part of next year. Which that's to me one of the bigger things that like the NBA is still kind of looking at. It's probably also why Memphis is is kind of like leaving him away from the team because it'll just look bad for them. They're
Yeah.
hoping that kind of through that, like, oh, well, he served already like a 6 or 7 game suspension, so 50 will turn into like 40. But um, first of all, I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but if I was like actually famous, which I'm nowhere near famous, I would not have social media. Um,
Hmm.
like there's too many things that just can get you in trouble. I mean, we saw what happened with Kyrie and the drama that surrounded him. Um, Kevin Durant, we always talk about how he can be very weird with all like the burner accounts and everything like that. It
Hmm.
just to me wouldn't be worth it. And like I understand like maybe wanting to blow off some steam, but what are you doing at a nightclub at 5 o'clock in the morning the day after you lost? Like
Yeah.
it's not like you just won like a huge playoff game against the defending champions or something like that. Like you lost to Denver badly
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're out of the club. And maybe that's like his way of dealing with like the stresses or whatever, but and I'm gonna kind of call back to Roscoe's podcast from a couple weeks ago. Um, you are the average of one of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Wow.
Who is
Yeah.
Ja
Yeah.
spending the most time with? Because clearly it's not the best influence, the most influential people, or at
Yeah.
least a positive influential
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Because like the you're a $200 million man, at least from the NBA perspective. You ironically were replacing Kyrie at Nike, so you have that endorsement in. You're one of the main spokespeople for Powerade.
Yep.
And like, and this is something I think I forgot where I heard it from, but like you can make the argument that in a couple of years, Ja Morant might be the best American-born player in the
Mm.
NBA.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like you got Giannis, you got Embiid, you got Jokic, you got Luka Doncic. Like he could be that, and I know like he wouldn't be the best player, but there's still like a very unique market for that.
Yeah.
Kind of like I think with baseball, like Shohei Ohtani is pretty much considered the best player in baseball. I might disagree with that,
Right.
um, but also Aaron Judge is considered probably the best American-born player, at least going into this year.
Yeah.
So like, there's a unique market for it, and he's kind of blowing it because like at this point, like Ja Morant was like that up and coming guy, but like who is he hanging out with? Who are these people that are encouraging him to carry a gun? You're like a multi-millionaire at this point. Get a security team if you're really that afraid for your life.
Yeah.
Have like you can have open carry security team depending on like what state you're in and everything like that. Like you might as well just do that. Like who is not telling him, whether that's his father, whether that's one of his friends, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't like go on Instagram live at 5 in the morning.
Right.
Or hey,
Yeah.
let's put this gun away. Like
Yeah.
there is no one that's there that has that influence. And I think that's something that he should be seeking out and he should be looking towards.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of along those same lines, I've seen a few people kind of saying like, okay, so his dad, T. Morant, who has been a part of his life, which kind of also makes this whole situation bizarre. It's not like Ja like grew up in this really rough neighborhood or anything like that. Like he grew up in the suburbs. He never like had guns in his house growing up or anything like
Right.
that.
Private
He didn't
school.
really have to deal
Yeah.
with violence, like
Yeah.
which kind of makes it more bizarre.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like I've seen some people saying that his dad has become more of his friend than his dad.
Mm.
And that's something that's a little bit troubling. And I know like there's a lot of dynamics at play when you go from a guy that's not really making a ton of money to all of a sudden you have a $200 million contract signed and
Hmm.
you have all these endorsements and everything like that. I know there's a huge like power dynamic at play, but it is still important to say like as his dad, T Morant should be like, hey, like you need to chill out. Like we need
Yeah.
to take a step back. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Um, at this point, I would be a little surprised if he does play at all this year again, because
Okay.
it'll be really hard for
Yeah.
him to not like. I think the NBA is just kind of looking for that proof that, oh, well, he definitely had to have had the firearm. Maybe that isn't there, but also the NBA can kind of do what they want. It's not a legal thing because he was under police investigation, but they found like no probable cause of like him committing a crime. So
Yeah.
like anything that was there is not there.
Yeah.
But the NBA doesn't have it isn't like the NBA isn't the police. If
No.
they think that he had a gun there, then they have every right to suspend him.
Yeah. And it's the last thing that they want to happen. I think I might have mentioned this to you. That last game that I watched sometime last week before, it was I caught the end of when they held off the 76ers. They had like a 20 something point lead, and then they had 13-point lead, 14-point lead with a minute and change left, and they just barely held on. But watching that every second, it reminded me of watching Michael Jordan. And this is going to be my last point here. Um, I'll come back to Jordan and LeBron in a second. The cameras were on him 24/7. When they go to timeout, you see him walking, the cameras is following him walking to the timeout. Every second the camera is on him, and so clearly TNT and ESPN, the NBA network, really want him to be one of the faces of the NBA. And it's probably one of the reasons is, he's charismatic, um, handsome kid, but also one of the reasons is that you're right. He's one of the few American born stars up and coming. Not that, listen, the NBA went down this road a long time ago, and it's great, right? To have Giannis and Jokic and Doncic and these guys in. This is fantastic, right? But I think there's still like that market, like you said, Here's the last thing I'll say. You never saw LeBron James out in some club at 5 a.m., dancing around with his shirt off, brandishing, and strippers in the background and showing a gun or whatever. Michael Jordan had his moments where he gambled a lot. They catch him in Las Vegas and stuff like that, but not in a strip club or something like that. Kevin Durant, same thing. You can say what you want about him. He's been a model citizen off the court as well. I would have thought that there's so many examples, and we could go on, Jason Tatum, right? We can go on some of the top players, not just currently in the NBA, Steph Curry, that have just been model citizens, pillars, and you would think that Morant getting to that superstar status would look at one of these examples and say, hey, that's want to be like LeBron James, because LeBron James certainly, and Kobe Bryant before him, right, certainly said, hey, we want to be like Jordan, and I want to be like Kobe, and I want to be like LeBron now. So um he could be in some big trouble here. And on the court, which doesn't really matter, there is no way Memphis is going to get past the second round without him. They've got good players, and that I read something from, of all people, DeMarcus Cousins, I think this past week, that said that because, and I think he was wrong here. He said that because Memphis didn't have anybody over 30 years old or 30 years or older, and I'm guessing Steven Adams has to be close to that, and he probably is one of the leaders on that team. That because they have a bunch of young players is why they kind of run amok a little bit, and he has no example on the team. But he has his dad, like you said, and maybe his dad has kind of not acted like his dad. We don't know that, but um, I don't know. I just he's got examples that he could look towards anyway, you know. But let's hope he gets straightened out. At 23 years old, man, I just why would you want that gangster lifestyle, man? It's going to lead to Gilbert Arenas, who could have played another 5, 6, 7 years in the NBA easily. Nick Young. I mean, we can go down the Swaggy P, right? That's the lifestyle that he seemed like he wanted, and he got it now, right? He's still young enough to be playing in the league, so it'll be a shame if something happens to him, because ain't nothing good gonna happen to you at 5 a.m. in a strip club in a city that you don't really know. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Also, I did look this up. Steven Adams is 29,
Oh, he's
which is
29. Okay, but he's a veteran,
surprising.
right? Yeah, he's a veteran. He seems to be one of the leaders on that team. I mean, but you can't put that also on him. I mean, at some point, 23, you gotta be responsible for your own actions as well. All right, let's stay in the NBA real quick. Injuries, man. I'm really, really anxious to hear your thoughts, and I'm not laughing about this. This is horrible, but this guy is so snake bit. did you see the injury to Kevin Durant? And it looks like that he won't even be evaluated until another 2 to 3 weeks. What's your thoughts here on what's gonna happen now with Phoenix?
Hey, um, yeah, I saw the injury. It's wild.
In
Um,
warm-ups. Oh,
yeah, I also saw like someone, of course, because social media is crazy. I saw like his ankle sideways. It just is wild.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, you talked about this earlier when they made the trade. Like
Yeah.
getting rid of a lot of that depth
Oh,
is kind of challenging.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, oh, I should have this up a little bit better, but it's interesting because I saw this and I was like, oh wow, this is a very interesting number here. All right, so so in the last 4 seasons, these are the number of games missed by guys that have made an All-Star team at least 7 times. I'm gonna start from the bottom up. So Russell Westbrook, the least amount, 33.
Mhm.
This is over the last 4 years. Chris Paul, 42. Giannis, 49. James Harden, 63. LeBron, 76. Damian Lillard, 79. Paul George, 110. Anthony Davis, 112. Steph Curry, 113. Kyrie, 137. And Kevin Durant, 158. Um,
Wow.
since he's
Wow.
torn his Achilles, like he has been very injury prone. And
Yeah.
we had said, okay, so Phoenix at their like if everyone can stay healthy, is the finals
Oh,
favorites probably.
yeah.
And they were 3-0 and they were cooking with him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he can't stay healthy. And from what I've read, or I've seen in other places, he the they said that the injury that he sustained is a grade 2 ankle sprain,
Oh,
which like
yeah.
the average time that people have spent like missing games is 17 games. And
Oh,
sometimes 16 games left.
yeah. Yeah.
So he could be missing the rest of the regular season. And now I think if you're looking at it from a big picture perspective, I don't think that it's going to hurt them. Like, I don't think he needs time to kind of get back into the system. He
Oh,
just needs
no.
to be 100% when he gets back in.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
like, I've heard it said, and I agree with this. Kevin Durant seems to be the best like plug and play player
Oh,
out there. Like
no doubt.
you can put him
Yeah.
on any roster
Yeah.
and he'll thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. He comes back, he'll be fine. As long as he's healthy, he'll fit right back in. I I feel so bad for him. It's just and this is a nervous laughter more than anything else. I'm not laughing at, but I just feel so bad for him. I don't know of a guy that's more snake, but now he's got his 2 championships with the Warriors. And again, we don't know how this is going to play out. He could come back game 1 of the playoffs and Phoenix goes on that run that we expect. But I tell you this, it felt like a Carmelo to Denver deal, a James Harden to Philly deal in terms of you got rid of everybody, and the 3 players that they let go to the Nets, and obviously Crowder landed with Milwaukee, which was a great move for them. But I mean, those 3 guys was such a big part of your finals run and why you've been good these last few years. And it gave that team a lot of depth, kept guys coming off the bench. With now without those guys and without Durant, it's going to be tough for them. I think they'll drop in the seeding here some. I mean, Booker, as long as he's healthy, and Chris Paul doesn't look like himself, I think he's probably still hurting, but I just feel so bad for Kevin Durant. I really do. I don't I don't know how else to say it. He's so snake bit, and well, I don't know. I guess we'll see, but that is an interesting stat. He's out of all those all-stars, he's missed the most games, huh? And what was that for the
Yeah,
last 7 years?
last 4 years.
Last 4. He's missed over 100 something games in the last 4 years. It's amazing. He can't stay on the
And
court. Yeah.
and number 2 is Kyrie, who obviously wasn't missing a lot of time for injury, but
No.
he's also missed 137 games too.
I don't
See, I
remember
mean,
him
you look at
being
the
hurt
Nets,
that
like
much.
that's crazy.
Yeah,
Nah,
yeah. I mean that series against Milwaukee, or was that James Harden that was hobbling a lot? I remember him
That
being
was that was both of them.
both of them, right? Okay. But outside of that, I don't remember him being hurt a lot. I think he's missed a lot of games for a lot of other reasons. So let's think real quick, Dallas. Doncic, it looks like he's not going to be out more than another game or two because he had a scare with a thigh injury. Um, I mean, they look okay. What's your take so far on Kyrie and Doncic together?
Um, it's weird because they haven't seemed like they've clicked.
Yeah,
Like there was the one game where they both scored over 40,
yeah.
which is great, and you're probably going to have a couple other games like that. But one of the things that I have, like one of the concerns was that they were going to like be not a great defensive team, and it seems like that's still kind of the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, like something kind of seems off because like now I didn't think they were going to be this good, but there was people like, oh well, they're going to be the best team in the West now.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's weird. The whole Western Conference is just so bizarre because like Denver is number one, but I feel like there's not a lot of people like, oh well, Denver's going to the finals. Um, Memphis obviously has their issues. There's still people picking the Lakers to come out of the West too, even though the Lakers are maybe in the playing at
The
this
Lakers have
point.
come out of the West? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Golden State. Golden State has only won 7 road games all year,
Yeah, that is
or
stunning.
7-24 or something like that.
That I saw that the other day. That is stunning. And they're missing Andrew Wiggins, man. And I think he's missed now 10 games for personal reasons. They won't say why, which that's fine. We don't need to know why. Just hope and pray that everything is okay with him. But my goodness, man. I'm shocked that the Warriors only have 7 road wins. That's stunning.
Yeah.
Uh yeah. Um, so Dallas, you're not Gaga on this pairing just yet.
Nah.
Well, I tell you what though, Dallas didn't do like Phoenix, right? They didn't trade the whole team to get him. But they do. You mentioned defensively, Finney Smith is such a great defensive player, and so they're definitely missing him a little bit. He was one of the guys that the Nets have, that the Nets got in exchange for him, but they didn't like deplete the team like Phoenix did.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things it's like you kind of, especially when you're talking about the like your depth,
Yeah,
like when it
yeah.
comes to the playoffs, you need those like
Oh,
7, 8, 9 guys.
no doubt.
That kind of makes the difference between winning and losing.
Which is why I think the Knicks will do well in the playoffs here. It looks like they're on a collision course with Cleveland. Although we go to the Garden and they lose, to the one of the worst teams in the NBA with Charlotte, and that's okay. It was a great, great night. I'll tell you, the fan base is really, really pumped up. It was electric. It felt like the Garden, from years ago. It really did. There's a lot of hope, I think, for the Knicks. And go through it. Did you know that Sacramento? So Sacramento beat the Knicks last night. I doubt if you were up to watch it. I know I
No,
wasn't.
not at all.
But Sacramento is 39-26. They're the number 2 seed in the West. And you and I now listen. I was not going to say me. You called this. You said that Mike Brown hiring him, giving him finally after all these years another shot at coaching was a brilliant move by Sacramento. And remember the other coach, Atkinson, said he would stay in Golden State because I don't know if they offered him that job or another one to be a head coach, but he wanted to stay and maybe eventually replace Steve Kerr there in Golden State. But Mike Brown raised his hand and said, "Nope, I'll go," because he was waiting for another shot. And I mean, they're the highest scoring team in the league, which I didn't realize until yesterday. But I want to take the conversation real quick somewhere else in the NBA, and then we'll move over to some of this innocent till proven guilty stuff I wanted to talk about. I know you wanted to as well. Um, MVP for the NBA. Gotta really start to talk about that as the season is winding down. And an interesting conversation happened on First Take this past week with Kendrick Perkins and JJ Redick, who's both of them have turned out to be really good analysts and perfect for those type of shows. But Redick is also good on games. But Perkins, I thought this was way out of left field. I don't know why. I mean, there hasn't been many. We don't like to talk about race, right? But there hasn't been many white MVPs over the years. I mean, you had Steve Nash and Nowitzki and Larry Bird. I can't think of many more in my era, that I can remember. I remember Dave Cowens years ago. But anyway, Jokic, the Joker, right, from Denver, has won it twice, 2 times in a row. I thought the first half and probably a little bit into the second half that Jason Tatum to me was the MVP, the way the Celtics were playing and how he was carrying them. I'm not so sure now. The Sixers have a great record, and Joel Embiid, I believe, is still leading the league in scoring. I could be off there by a couple of days. But listen to Jokic's stats. Denver's 46-20. They're the number one team in the West, and they probably will hold on to that number one seed. They've got a pretty good lead on that. And so they're going to go into the playoffs as the number one seed in the West. He's averaging 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists as a center. I mean, uh, it's hard not to give him the MVP again if those stats hold. I mean, he's averaging a triple double. I mean, that's Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson territory. And so I'm curious, who's your MVP?
At this point, it's got to be Jokic.
Yeah.
Like I can keep it simple and just simply say, guy is averaging a triple double. And last time someone averaged a triple double, they won the MVP with
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know the exact number. I want to say it's 23-0. Denver is this year when Jokic hits a triple double. So and Embiid, I did double check. Embiid is still leading league in scoring. He's averaging over 33 points a game.
Yeah. Amazing. That's amazing.
But also they are the number 3 seed, and it doesn't look like they're hopping any higher than that.
Yeah.
Like you could probably also make a case for Giannis. Let me see. Trying to pull up his stats here. Because he's averaging 31 points a game, 11 rebounds, 5 assists.
Wow.
So
yeah,
he's averaging more points, averaging more rebounds, but he's also not. I mean, Jokic is still doubling him in assists. So
yeah,
and to me, he's had a better year, and also his team has had a better year this year than he has the last 2. However, the list of 3-peat MVPs is very, very short.
Who is it?
Now that I think about it, I don't think even LeBron has won MVP 3 years in a row.
No, maybe not. Did Kareem do? I think Kareem won 6 or 7 MVPs. I wonder if he did 3 in a row.
There's only 3. Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell.
And Bill Russell. Wow. See, you put Jokic in that category, man. That'll be amazing. With those 3 legendary, just unbelievable players. You can make a case for Giannis, even though he's off on the assist there, because the Bucks are 48-18. They've smoked right past, the Celtics, and they're the number 1 seed now in the East, and I think they'll hold on to that. So I mean, what a collision course that would be, right? To have a finals of the Bucks and the Nuggets. I don't think the Nuggets have ever been to the NBA finals. So this will be very, very interesting. They certainly, the Nuggets are one of those legacy ABA teams. And I remember them winning championship in the ABA, but I don't think they've ever been to the NBA finals. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not on that. Well, you close that conversation out. So you're right. So real quick, Patrick Ewing, that hurt me, man, last night that he got fired at Georgetown, but listen, they've been really bad. 6-25, I think they were this year. And it got me listening real quick, and we can have this conversation next week. Who's the greatest Knick of all time? I still think it's Patrick Ewing. But did you know, let me give you some stats that's going to blow you away. I know you love this. So game 7, 1970 finals, 69-70 season, the Knicks and Lakers, Knicks win their first championship. Did you know that Clyde that night had 36 points, 19 assists, 7 rebounds? They didn't count steals back then, but by all accounts, he had 8 steals as well. I mean,
Wow.
you talk about okay, but that gets overlooked because that's the Willis Reed coming out of, the locker room and down the corridor thing, and which was great. But the Knicks have had some great players over the year. I just started listing Willis Reed, Carmelo, Allen Houston, Bob McAdoo, Latrell Sprewell, and now starting to build a legacy for himself because this is fourth year, right? With the Knicks is Julius Randle. And so, but we'll have to have this debate next year, next week rather, not next year, next week, whether is Patrick Ewing the greatest Knick of all time. I don't have his stats in front of me, but I mean Ewing was great for a long, long time. But that's terrible that he got that fired. But he probably and they very classy. He was, I'll always be a Hoya, and the president of the university said, he epitomizes everything. Okay, let's jump into this conversation real quick. We've talked about stuff like this for a lot. So Mike Clevenger, pitcher now with the White Sox. Um, Baseball's not going to suspend him for he was accused of domestic abuse. He was also accused, and I didn't realize this, so I was started reading about this the last couple of days. I wanted to talk about it. He was also accused of child abuse because he's accused of throwing a thing of a wad of tobacco. It sounds just weird and disgusting at his baby in anger. Accused of hitting or throwing his iPad at his pregnant girlfriend, as well as grabbing her. And so in baseball now, so they supposedly did a very, I shouldn't say supposedly because I'll just take them at their word. They did a very thorough investigation. Talked to 15 witnesses. Apparently, Clevenger handed over his phone, so they were able to look at all the text messaging and messages between him and his now ex-girlfriend, and they came to the conclusion that he didn't do anything wrong. Now, Trevor Bauer, obviously, I don't know if they did the same type of, thorough investigation there because I'm starting to question. I can't believe I'm starting to question this, and I think you are too. Was he treated fairly? Because obviously the police didn't charge him, and are we just making some moral judgments here, right? Which it's okay for you and I to make those moral judgments, right? But I think his employer, you want to have they can't. I mean, they can say, hey, we just don't want you to play for us anymore, right? They do have that right, but then he has the right to take legal action like he has. But now I'm just wondering, did he get the same type of thorough investigation that Clevenger got? And did they jump the gun with him because of the indication, the implication that this was, this was, they both agreed to do this. I'm forgetting the word I'm looking for. Consensual. Um, what they did. So I'll say real quick, and I'll shut up and hear your take on this. I sent you the Michael Irvin thing, and just some quick background there. Michael Irvin had his problems years ago. I mean, he credits everything to God and where he straightened his life out. He's been a model citizen for a long time now, and obviously he's pretty good analyst on the NFL Network as well as ESPN. And apparently at the Super Bowl, he's staying in a Marriott hotel, and a lady accuses him of saying something inappropriately and getting ready to touch her inappropriately. So right away, he's kicked out of the hotel and he's sent back home by both ESPN and the NFL Network, and he hasn't been on either one of those networks, since. So his lawyer got a hold of the hotel footage, and they're suing now Marriott for $100 million because apparently the hotel footage shows exactly what he says. And the police also haven't charged him because they've talked to a lot of witnesses that say nothing happened. But there's also video here that no one has seen yet, including Michael Irvin. They only let his lawyers see the footage of it, and the lawyer is very, very adamant that I saw the footage. Nothing happened. It was almost like he just said hi to her or something like that, or she approached him. And so he'll probably be back on both networks sooner rather than later, right? Um, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on both of these. And is the tide turning? The last one I'll throw in real quick, Chris Beard, right? He was a head coach at Texas basketball, and they fired him. They suspended him one day, the next day they fired him, and he was cleared also of any domestic abuse from his wife. Now his wife did have bruises on her upper arms, but it's kind of consistent with him saying that she attacked him and he was trying to hold her back. And apparently she got into a little bit of trouble. They decided not to press charges. She said that the allegations was false, against him. Now it looks like he'll get a second shot. Looks like he'll be the new coach at Ole Miss, um, as he's the number one candidate there. But what's your whole take on all this? And are we now gonna see where we take our time a little bit, figure out what's going on before guys get suspended, or kicked off of a network right away?
Yeah, I think the idea of like taking time to figure out the facts is important
Yeah.
because I do look at the Trevor Bauer situation, um, and maybe I don't know, it's still hard because maybe part of it because Clevenger has said from the very beginning that like he's open to sharing everything. Bauer wasn't, but
Right.
also maybe Bauer wasn't because like you're talking about like you're not just talking about like relationship with a significant other. You're talking about like a sexual relationship,
Right.
which is probably something you don't want to necessarily like have out to the public.
Right.
Um, but I think maybe you might start to see like let's figure out what's happening first. I think what some of these like it's weird. The Clevenger situation to me is weird because number one, he was still with the team, like kind of with the team as this was going on. I'm still surprised that they didn't do anything. Like, and what I'm worried about and what concerns me, at least from the baseball perspective, is like, what if something does come out
Yeah.
and then you find out afterwards? You'll have like the Ray Rice situation or that kicker with the Giants that like he was out for a game and then they found out that like he was like beating up his pregnant wife or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, so to me, it's always important to kind of exercise that caution. Because even with Michael Irvin, like you want to make sure that like you're not taking things to the nth degree, and just flat out firing them. I think kind of having the let's place you on administrative leave, let's kind of let things figure themselves out, and then get the facts. I think the way that they're doing that is tremendous.
Yeah.
Because like there are people out there. I'm not. I think it's important to say like you should always believe people when they say someone is hurting them or someone is sexually assaulting them, verbally assaulting them, whatever. Like it's always important to value that because if you don't, then that's when things can kind of get a little hairy and people start getting taken advantage of, things like that. But there are also people out there that are just trying to make themselves a dollar, trying to get theirs, so to speak. And I'm not saying that was the case with Michael Irvin, but also like if you're clear of all charges, you're clear of all charges. Um, so I don't know. And there's also the aspect of there's a difference between the legal issues and the moral issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about that with Trevor Bauer.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Mike Clevenger, to me, okay, so if you have evidence that he threw tobacco at his baby, like you're not telling me it's not worth like, hey, you should probably get suspended for 5 games, miss a start.
Yeah.
Like to me, doing nothing is worse than even if it's like a slap on the wrist or a fine or something like that. Michael Irving, like obviously missing the Super Bowl, which like as an NFL analyst, like that's the biggest thing that you can miss. I think even if he gets no other ramifications, I think that would be punishment enough. Because sometimes, like, I'm not sure what happened fully, because obviously I wasn't there and everything like that, but something happened where it triggered, like, and it could easily be that this this individual, this lady, was like looking for something, even though nothing was there. Like
Yeah.
saying simply hi is not like sexually assaulting someone. It's not being abusive. Like just saying hi or just having a simple conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to recognize too. But also, yeah, like especially from like the bigger corporation perspective, even if nothing happened, you always want to take the side of caution. And I think like sometimes the players or broadcasters can kind of get a little offended by that, but you would rather them be extra cautious than under cautious.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to recognize.
Yeah, you summed it up great. I agree with everything you said. I Let me just ask you this now. Where are we at here with consistency, right? Is now every team going to kind of make up its own, rules here? Although Major League Baseball handled this, and I know every situation is different, but are we to a place where a team could say, morally, I don't like what you did, so you're out. We're gonna cut you. We're gonna have to pay you, but you're yeah, you're done. Legally, you're fine. And I think this is kind of what happened with Bauer. The more and more now this is everything is unfolded and every day goes by, and he hasn't gotten a sniff, right? There's no teams that have called him up and said, "Hey, come on in, let's see you in spring," because this would be the time, right? Bring him in spring training and let's see what you got. I don't think any teams have done that, right, with him. So um I just I don't know, man. I'm wondering where this goes because the Clevenger thing, if you look it up, there's several articles that and several newspaper folks, and not all ladies, that saying there's no way he should be playing, right? That MLB and the White Sox should excuse him. Um, eh, but on the other hand, if he's been found, if he hasn't been charged, and MLB did this extensive investigation, why wouldn't he play? You know what I'm saying? So where do you think we're at?
Yeah, I don't know, because that's the other thing is it doesn't seem very consistent. And I think that's one of the challenges. Because yeah, every situation is different, but there still should be some kind of standard. Now, you could open a giant can of worms by doing that. And I understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So like let's say like I don't know, like let's say you don't really like a player and so someone like will randomly accuse them of something, even if it's completely baseless. And then like if the standard is you're on administrative leave for the next week, then it's just a bad standard to do.
Yeah.
But you have to have something. And you can't be like, oh well, you look at this guy and then it's completely different. I think with Bauer, it seems like a lot of what's happened with him now looks like it's more because people don't like him as opposed to what he actually did.
Yeah.
But maybe what he actually did, they found out that yes, that's what he did, and they don't stand for that. And I don't know, kind of being a moral police can be hard because like different teams are going to take it different ways.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about, like um, in the South, if a athletic director is sleeping around, that could be a much bigger scandal than somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's teammates aren't crazy about Clevenger either, right? With the whole COVID thing and him hiding that from the Indians. Yeah, well, the Indians were the Indians then, I think. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is in the water there in Cleveland where some of these things come out in there. All right, we'll keep an eye on it. So we'll NFL real quick, and I want to give you time to talk about these baseball injuries with your Yankees, man. This is not good. Um,
Yeah.
but I should be excited. I should be pumped up, and the Jets are my team. The Jets aren't your team. You don't root against them though. You're like me, it's New York. You're in. But I'm I gotta warm up to the idea of having Aaron Rodgers. Don't hear what I'm not saying. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and I still think he can play a couple of years at a high level. So I just the only things that concern me, Green Bay. I remember reading an article that compared this a few years back. Green Bay compares to the town of Huntington. Huntington, Long Island is about the same size as the city of Green Bay. Now I know you have Milwaukee, you have other bigger cities there, but I've just gotten the feeling over the years that Aaron is so thin-skinned. Him playing in New York, woo, I don't know. First bad game he has. You know, Second thing is his age. I'd love to see the Jets go after someone like Lamar Jackson, who if you lock him in, will probably be the quarterback for the next 10 years. So I'm gonna start to warm up to the idea of Aaron Rodgers being a Jet, and then I'll probably start to get really excited about it if it does happen, which it looks like it's gonna happen. I don't it doesn't seem like there's other teams that are gaga. I'm not sure why the Raiders wouldn't want him, a team like that, but or the Falcons or someone like that. But um it looks like the Jets are probably one of the few teams, if only team, that is really looking to get him. So um let me ask you this question and get your opinion also on Aaron Rodgers. Um, why aren't teams going after Lamar Jackson? Is it because of because they were lining up for Deshaun, Um, but is it because of the that Baltimore can match the contract and they would have to give up several draft picks, if they do, sign him? Like it's sort of this weird restricted free agent thing that doesn't happen that often in the NFL, with him. So number one, Lamar. Number two, your take on Aaron.
All right. Well, so I'll kind of give a little bit of the context of the exclusive franchise tag here.
Okay, gotcha.
So the how it works essentially, um, which also, by the way, we could talk about this maybe next week. Saquon Barkley has a
Yeah,
non-exclusive franchise tag.
yeah.
Um, so essentially, like the contract that they have, I don't know, 30 something million dollars. If Lamar decides to agree to it and stay there, he can still talk to other teams. Um, and basically, if they come to an agreement, Baltimore can decide to match it, or they can decide, hey, bye. And if they say bye, then you lose your next two first round draft picks. So
Wow.
if you're looking at it from, let's say, the Jets,
Yeah,
um, the Jets would more than likely have to give up a couple of first round draft picks to get Aaron Rodgers anyway. Like they're probably giving up at least a first rounder. I would assume probably two. So you might as well get a guy that's younger in Lamar
yeah,
Jackson. Just bottom line.
yeah,
Um, so that from that perspective, to me, first of all, the Jets should go after Lamar Jackson. Like they should say, wait, Aaron Rodgers, give us a second. We're going to try to get this guy that's younger than you, that also is an MVP, unanimous MVP, something you've never done. Um, I have a feeling though Aaron Rodgers is going to end up with the Jets. That's kind of my vibe.
yeah,
But
yeah.
back to Lamar, I'm very curious as to why no one's going after him. I'm worried. I think one of the bigger things, because like the easiest way to make sure that you sign him is sign him to a deal that Baltimore can't really match. Like whether you do like a front loaded or a back
Yeah.
loaded thing, so the salary cap just makes it really hard. But like I feel like there's not a lot of teams lining up because they're worried about the injuries. I feel like there's the narrative of, well, he's a running quarterback, he's gonna miss time. But also something that came out recently. I don't know if you've seen the NFL has done like their report cards. Like the Players Association interviewed like 1,300 different players,
Uh-huh. Oh,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
asking about all the different things.
yeah,
One of the things that was graded very low, I believe it was the lowest in the NFL, was the Ravens training facilities
yeah.
and like their trainers. So it seems like that the trainers aren't that good.
Huh.
And
That's
maybe a
interesting.
lot of the injuries are extended just because of the the lack of expertise on the training staff. I
Huh.
don't know that for sure. That's just kind of my speculation. Um, but it is interesting because, like, yeah, Deshaun Watson had several people willing to give him fully guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
If I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm like, well, I'm better than Deshaun Watson. I've won the same amount of playoff games, and I have an MVP in my belt. Like, why am I getting less money than this guy who
Yeah.
also had all of his legal issues on top of that?
Yeah.
So, um, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this ends up playing out because
Yeah.
I do think that he deserves to get paid.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like he's better than Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray's making more than Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see how it plays out. I'll probably be happy when I think it'll be when. I think the Jets will sign Rodgers now or trade for him. Um, and then I'll start to get a little excited because we do have some playmakers, but we're already cutting, guys like Braxton Berrios got cut, yesterday, who was a big part of the team. He's an excellent third down receiver and punt returner, but already to save money to make room for Aaron, because I think it was like $5 million that they saved by cutting him. You might see that, and that's the thing about the salary cap, right? You start to see good players not being able to stay. All right, real quick, what's happening with your Yankees, man?
Uh, I'm starting to get the 2020 vibes already, or
Uh
2019 with all these injuries.
yeah.
Now I'll start with Rodon because he's obviously the biggest name.
Yes.
Um,
Shocked with him.
and he had his first spring start and was rocked, like 5 runs, 2 2/3 innings, which like normally you kind of don't look into something like that with spring because
Right.
guys are like, oh, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, whatever. Now he did say that this is something that he would play through if this was October 5th, or if we're playing in the ALDS, like he's on the mound. So part of me thinks it's a little bit of the Yankee caution, signing a guy to $160+ million contract, and you're like, I don't want this to start out with him getting hurt.
Yeah.
Also, forearm strain, you always get worried that it's going to turn into Tommy John.
Yeah.
So they're probably like, let's not try to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so he's hitting the IL. This is part of the reason why the Yankees needed another starter, and I could still see them going after like maybe not this guy in particular, but a guy like say Cole Hamels, like a guy that's like old, definitely like past
Yeah.
his prime, but can give you some innings. Corey Kluber would have been a good one too, like a guy kind
Yeah.
of that ilk.
Yeah.
Um, just to make sure, like, because if another injury happens, you're a little worried. So right now you got Cole, you got Severino, you got Cortez. Who Cortez they're pushing back to the 5th start because he's dealing with an injury himself.
Oh,
You got Herman, and then you also have Clark Schmidt.
yeah.
Like after that, I don't know who would be the backup starter. Maybe
Yeah.
Davy Garcia.
Yeah.
I mean, like that to me thinks I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and grab another guy.
Yeah.
Um, Lou Trevino is also another interesting injury to me, and one that kind of concerns me a little bit more. Because he was kind of the guy that would come in the middle of an inning. I think he had like 26 or something like that inherited runners.
Mhm.
So like he's like the type of guy. I've heard it said before. He's the fireman, like putting out the fire. Um, Tommy Canley also like okay, whatever.
Yeah.
We kind of deal with that, but like it's always interesting to kind of see where these spots open up because like going into spring training, I'm like, all right, I can pretty much guess the roster. 25 out of 26 guys, I'll probably know we're going to be on there.
Yeah.
Also based on like service time, options, things like that. Now you're like, okay, so who's filling out the back end of that bullpen?
Yeah.
So right now you got probably Marignaccio, you got King, Loizaga, Wandy Peralta,
Yeah.
Clay Holmes.
Yeah.
But now you're like, okay, so who's getting those last few spots?
Yeah.
Which like that's not life or death. And also, I always say this: you'd rather have the injuries in March and April than in September.
Yeah.
So, but man, it's also Harrison Bader getting. He's gonna have an MRI for an oblique.
Uh,
Obliques always scare me for hitters.
yeah.
Although
He's been
with
injury
him,
prone. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
because I'd seen an article, I think it was by John Heyman, like this guy embodies being a Yankee. I mean, he was great in the postseason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
he's from Bronxville. Like
Yeah.
he's a New Yorker, not
Yeah.
only just like in how he plays, but in literally who he is.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, you should extend him. Now I'm like, I don't know.
Not yet.
Although
Yeah.
not yet, at least.
Not yet. Let's see him play a full season here. Um, I the starting depth, and then we'll get ready to close out. I, I was surprised with Rondon, and that didn't look good, man. When he walked off and he's holding like his forearm. But I'll liken it to the Mets last year. I should have the numbers in front of me, but I don't. But because I didn't think we would talk about this. But that starting pitcher pitching, when you have that good third, fourth starter, that prevents you from like losing series and getting swept. I think the Mets only got swept once or twice last year, if I remember right, which is amazing over a 162 game season. And I forget it was a very low amount of series that they lost. I guess when you win 101 games, that probably happens. But I credit that all to their pitching last year. Their starting pitching was so good and so deep, even with some injuries. And so the Yankees need that because the Yankees need to sweep series and take series, take it one at a time, especially in a division that they're in. So hopefully they get that straightened out. There's got to be someone. Listen, man, I'm telling you, send this to Brian Cashman, man. Give Milwaukee a call. Corbin Burns hates them. There's no way he's gonna stay with them long term. I would give Milwaukee a call and see, hey, listen, just have a conversation, see what they want. Kick the tires.
I'll give a trade proposal right here. Gleyber Torres for Corbin Burns. Who says no? I mean,
Well,
they have about. I think they're both would be free agents. Well, I think Gleyber's at the end of this year.
yeah,
Like, who says no? And the Yankees could feasibly plug Volpe in right now,
yeah,
which Judge has given glowing reviews for Anthony Volpe. So
yeah. It's gonna take more than Torres though to get former Cy Young winner. So
yeah,
you can start there though. You start there, and maybe ask them to give you Willie Adames, who's going to come up on free agency. It's probably going to cost them a lot of money. I know they want to. He had a great year with them last year. They probably want to keep those guys. See, the Brewers though, they're one of those weird teams in the middle that they can, they could definitely compete. I mean, we'll do our baseball thing in another couple of weeks. So, but I think the Brewers, could definitely compete to get back into the playoffs this year with the team that they have. If they keep the team they have, trouble is they have a tough time filling up that stadium, so they can't afford a lot of these players. So really odd situation. All right. Do you have any inspiration? You want to do some inspiration real quick?
yes, I do.
All right.
Actually, I just mentioned him, Aaron Judge. So I think he continues to embody what a great leader is.
Yeah.
Um, and I see it in a couple of examples. Well, I had mentioned the glowing review of Anthony Volpe. He said, like, age shouldn't matter. If you can play, you can play. I don't know if the Yankees will actually take that to heart. I can see him still starting out at AAA. Sorry for another day. But I texted you. Aaron Judge has played the last couple days in spring training in left field.
Yeah.
Because the Yankees still haven't really figured it out. And Giancarlo Stanton, who is better offensively when he's in the field, he doesn't have the range for left field at Yankee Stadium, which is much bigger than right field at Yankee Stadium. So a guy that has literally a section named after him in right field is like, I'll give that up so that my teammate can do better. I mean, last year, I think technically he won MVP as a center fielder because he played so many games there. Like, this is a guy that he doesn't care where he plays. He wants to see his team win.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I
But
agree.
that's not the biggest thing to me. So I don't know if you've seen this. It was an article that came out a couple of days ago. He met up with Paul Goldschmidt, MVP's buddying up, because he wanted to continue to get better. This is a guy that had arguably the best offensive season in like 50 years.
Mhm.
And he was like, I still need to learn my craft better. So he looked at what Paul Goldschmidt was doing with a two strike approach, kind of having a lesser stride. And he kind of took some lessons from him and kind of like met with him to kind of learn a little bit more about how he does what he does.
Uh-huh.
And it already is kind of paid off because he hit his first home run on a two strike pitch.
Wow.
And like looking at like the breakdown, he didn't have much of a stride. So like, just like the idea of someone that you're like, you literally hit like the pinnacle of what you can do as MVP. And he's still like, I want to get better. To
That's
me, it
awesome.
kind of shows like there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Real quick, I'll my inspiration because I had to check this morning. Is a sport that we don't talk about that much, but the Boston Bruins, are in a historic season. They're probably going to wind up with the most wins ever regular season in the NHL and most points ever. But they played Edmonton, who's also very good last night, and Connor McDavid, who's the best player in the NFL in the NHL. Um, Said that he said this before the game because somebody asked him, is this another regular season game? And he's like, absolutely not. He said, the Bruins, yeah, they're great, but they got to go through us at some point if they want to get to the finals or they want to win this championship. And sure enough, man, the Edmonton smoked the Bruins last night, led by one Connor McDavid. So sending a message, I always like that when it's late in the regular season, but he's like, no, because most players will give you the canned answer. Yeah, it's just another regular season game. But he's like, no, we got to send a message to these guys, and they did. And no shade to our buddy Dave Ruff, who loves his Bruins, loves his Celtics up there in Boston, his Red Sox and his Pats. He's a full all in all sport type of guy, but I know he loves the Bruins and follows them and goes to some games. But they're in the middle or at the end of just a historic season. But we'll see. We've seen that in the NHL before in recent history. I think with Columbus actually a few years ago, where the team had the best record and they lost in the first round, like got swept if I remember right. There's been a couple of Dallas I know that's happened to once before as well. So we'll see. But Edmonton sending a little message, yeah, you're gonna have to take us out if you want to get to the finals. So I thought that was really really interesting. All right, man, you ready to take us home? Take us home, Ken.
This is Kenny Squared Ed
Kenny,
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
we got a great interview coming up on Monday. Don't miss that. We'll have it out on Tuesday. Talk to everybody soon.